Hello, hello, Callie. Welcome to the Mentally Abaddest podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
We have a lot to talk about, a lot of good stuff to talk about. When I was doing my little research on you, I was like, this person seems cool. You've really been from like rock bottom to literally killing it in life. And I need to learn from you because for real, I was like looking you up. I was like, you're a celebrity coach. You were literally in the rock bottom, homelessness, to like literally becoming like having like $1 million businesses. It's like, wow. So I need to hear more about that. So before we get into how how truly amazing successful you are, I want to first go into your past to kind of understand like where you came from, because I know you have childhood trauma. So back in your childhood, like what type of like childhood trauma was it? Like bullying, like your home life? Like let's just get into that first.
Sure. So I had a violent childhood. I got bullied in school because I was overweight. So there was that. And I didn't have a lot of friends because I wasn't, I kind of shied away from people and threw myself into books. But at home, my dad was bipolar and he was very, you didn't know what was coming in the door. He was angry, he was sad, he was suicidal, he was violent. So it was always like a chaos. And then my mom got remarried and moved us into my grandmother's. And my grandmother was borderline personality. So again, very volatile, she would start a fight and then try to fix it. And it was always like mental health. And I noticed all my friends' families were normal. So I had this little group of like 5 friends and what I thought was normal. I come to learn later that they all had their own inner secrets, but you could sleep over there. My house, there was no sleepovers. You weren't allowed upstairs. You couldn't have boys in the house. There was all these weird rules, and they didn't have them. So I started escaping to kind of my other friends' houses, and that's what got me to study psychology because I kind of said, well, what's wrong with my family? None of these other friends I have these issues. My family has these weird issues. And there was no addiction. It was just straight up mental health. So that's sort of how I ended up where I am. But the childhood was very violent. And, there was an example I can give you. Like one time, my mom took us to Hershey Park and she went with her girlfriend. And I think I was maybe, I don't know, 12 maybe ish. So my sister was like 6 and her friend, and then her friend had a little baby. And we came home, and this is way before cell phones, and we were 10 minutes late. So we pulled up to the front door, and normally, you think your husband comes out, says, oh, I'm so glad you're home. How was your time? Did your kids enjoy it? That's not what my dad did. He rushed outside, screaming we were late, and my sister had a little pink parasol that we had bought that was really cute. He grabbed the parasol, he destroyed it. This is right in the middle of the street. So the neighbors are out, he's out, screaming bloody murder. How dare you be late? Why could you do this? That's the kind of violence we were met with. We didn't know we were going to get happy, sad, violent, suicidal. So that's sort of my upbringing into like what it was like. And then I left home early. I split because I was like, I got to get out of this craziness, which led me to end up being homeless because I kind of left early with no resources and tried to figure it out.
Did you yourself experience like mental health issues such as like severe depression, severe anxiety, like any? Because I know like with bipolar and BPD, well, BPD is typically trauma based, so it's developed, and bipolar people say can be genetic. I personally have struggle with bipolar and BPD. I am medicated so I don't become violent. But I do know like generations like before, mental health wasn't talked about as much, wasn't really understood. Most people didn't talk about childhood trauma and how it could, show up with like bipolar and BPD. So I guess my question for you is, did you struggle with your own like personal like mental health issues as well?
So no, I don't have anything in the DSM per se. I did have an eating disorder. So that's how mine manifest with, it wasn't a binge and purge. It was eating till I involuntarily vomited. So I
Mhm.
had that, which led to a diet pill addiction, which led to a speed addiction. So I ended up on the addiction side of things,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the bipolar. I did have anger issues because
Mhm.
my father was so violent. And that's what I learned, this is how you react. And it was an
Yeah.
overreaction to everything. So as I went through my own therapy and my own healing journey, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not how you react. if somebody posted something or got, did something, I'd get real mad. Like, wait a minute, why am I mad?
Yeah.
Anger is repressed hurt. Okay, so I'm hurt. Why am I hurt? And then I started learning about my behavior. It's like, oh, okay, so this is what's really happening. So technically, no to mental health, but on the addiction side, that's where all my issues were. Because I was using drugs to cope with the eating disorder, which is, food addiction, which then led to a drug addiction, which led into almost dying. So I kind of went down that.
Do you think it manifested from your bullying when people were calling you fat?
So people used to call me fat, and then my dad called me fat. He would say, "You're fat. You don't
Yeah, it's
need
like
to
a
eat. No man is ever going to want you." So it was like, and I would just eat and eat and eat. And
Mhm.
then my story goes is that I was in college. And if you can imagine, all the girls go out for ladies' night and they all hook up, they get boyfriends. And I would come home by myself every Thursday night with no phone numbers. Like nobody was interested. And
Mhm.
one night I'm sitting on the floor and I'm eating with my hands and I'm eating cake. And I have cake on my face, there's cake on the wall, there's cake on the dog, there's cake everywhere because I'm just doing this while I'm crying. And my roommate walks in and she goes, "Dude, that's not normal."
Mhm.
And I went, "What? This is what I've always done. This is my coping mechanism." And she's
Mhm.
like, "That's crazy." So I went to the counselor in college, and the counselor pulled open the DSM, which is the manual that diagnosed, what's wrong with you. And back then, they only had two eating disorders, and it was binge and purge. And she said, "Well, do you eat and you throw up?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't. I don't force myself to throw up." "Okay, well, you're not bulimic." "Well, do you restrict food?" I'm like, "Oh God, no, we don't restrict food." "Well, you're not anorexic." "Well, you don't have an eating disorder, so you're just fat." And I went, "Okay."
Called you
So she's,
fat?
"You're just fat. That's what's wrong with you." Yeah,
Oh my god. And that was a counselor?
I was a counselor. So she
What?
sent me to the fat doctor back then,
There's a
and
fat doctor?
that fat doctor, and they
Okay.
were, now it's Ozempic, then it was Fen-Phen. So I go into the office, I have this little referral slip from the counselor because back then it was paper, and I walked in and he said, "Okay, so you want to lose weight?" And I'm like, "Well, not really, but I guess that's why I'm here. And he's like, "Okay, you have a food problem. Okay, so here's some Fen-Phen." And he wrote me a prescription. And it was the first time I had been given a medical like diagnosis. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm fat and I need this drug to not be fat." So that's what I learned from the doctor. And I took it. And I went from 160 pounds to 90 pounds in a matter of 2 months. That's how quick it was.
Oh my
Now I'm
god,
still
sounds so
eating cake
dangerous.
and yeah, and I'm still eating pizza and I'm still binging. I'm just now thin. And I was too thin. And I really took to the drug. And then they
Mhm.
discontinued it because it was killing people, it was destroying their heart. So now I have no drug. So now I go to diet pills, which led to a speed addiction. And I end up in the ER because I'm having heart pain. I was 23. And the doctor looks at my EKGs and he's like, "Well, it looks like the lining of your heart is kind of getting ripped apart. And whatever you're taking, you should stop." Now, I'm using the drugs to manage the food problem. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking, I can't not have the drugs because I have this food problem. Now, this is like 1996. So there's
Okay.
no, help at this point. And there's no like, better help online, just get a therapist. It's kind of difficult because there's no cell phones yet. So I was like, "Okay, well, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I just won't use as much." Well, I tried to manage my use, which didn't work. And I ended up in another ER 6 months later. That doctor looked at my EKG and he sat me down and he said, "Listen," and he dropped the F bomb. And that's when he got my attention because I was like, "Doctors don't say that." And he said, "You're going to die." And I said, "What does that mean?" He goes, "If you keep using drugs like this, you will die, period. End stop, full stop." And I'm like, "What do I do?" And he goes, "Here's a pamphlet for Overeaters Anonymous, and here's a pamphlet for Narcotics Anonymous." That was the solution back then. So
Mhm.
here I am. I have two new pamphlets. I'm like, okay. So I marched myself into OA, and it's in a church basement, and it's cold, and it's damp, and everybody's crying, and everybody's in their 50s and 60s, and I'm 23. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. So I left. Then I went to NA, and NA had coffee, which is caffeine. Love my caffeine. They had sugar, love my sugar, and they had cigarettes, love my Newports. And I was like, this is where I belong. So now I'm drinking coffee, eating sugar, which of course puts me right back into the diet pill addiction because now I'm eating and drinking all my favorite things. And I couldn't stop. And a friend of mine said, come with me to yoga. Now, here I am. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I can't touch my toes. What am I going to do yoga? And it's hot there. Who wants to be in the yoga class? So she drags me to yoga. I'm 5 minutes in. I can't touch my toes and I'm complaining. I hate this. This is stupid. It's too hot. Why am I here? And she looks at me and she goes, shut up. It's the first time somebody like told me just to be quiet and listen, right? Everybody was nice to this point. And she's like, just stop whining. And I looked at her and I'm like, I'm not whining. She goes, you're whining, you're complaining, just be quiet. So I did the yoga. And afterwards, the instructor came up and he said to me, he's like, you need to get sober. He goes, you're teetering on the brink of death. And he's like, I'm going to help you do it on a yoga mat. And we're going to address your trauma. And it was the first time anybody said, oh, hey, you're doing drugs and eating because you have trauma. And I was like, you get it. And he's like, I get it. And next thing you know,
Hallelujah.
I'm doing yoga. Yeah. So that's how I got sober. That's the whole story.
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask you that. I love how you just like naturally just like went into that. It totally makes sense. And at the end of the day, it is all rooted back to childhood trauma. And now these days we talk a lot more of that. And I can't wait to hear more about like what you do. 'Cause I know you work with celebrities who have addiction. So I'm like definitely gonna be asking like a couple of stories, of course, anonymous, no names and such, because I'm very curious, and like how you help them and such. If you don't mind me asking, where did you grow up? I know you went to Hershey Park, so I'm assuming the tri-state
Philadelphia.
area.
I'm right outside. I grew up outside of Philadelphia in a little town called Pottstown. Yep.
Yeah, the reason I asked that because I grew up in New Jersey, so we're not too far from Pennsylvania. And
Huh.
obviously, I live in Florida, and you too. Welcome to Florida. And so I just feel like these areas in the US are just so different with like upbringing. And then also, you were saying all this happened like in the 90s, completely different time. Like I was literally probably 1 years old when this was going on. If you said 90s, I'm a 95 baby. So yeah, I had no idea what was going on. I was like literally just living my best life when I was 1 years old, to an extent, of course. I mean, I had to have surgery at a month old, so who knows? But but yeah, so that's why I asked because from what it sounds like, people are just so like straight to the point and doesn't really care too much about feelings or anything like that. Especially now today, I feel like that wouldn't fly today. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? When it came how it's more like sensitivity towards this and such. Because when you were telling me that story, I was thinking, like, did nobody go to you and think, oh, how about we first try to maybe change like your lifestyle and like what you're eating and like working out? And no, but like that concerns me. That's scary.
That didn't exist back then. Back then, remember, I'm Gen X. So
Hmm.
back then it was put your big girl panties on, knock it off, and get to work. We were the generation that would go out at night. We'd work all day,
Uh
switch
huh.
clothes, go to a club till 2 or 3 in the morning, sleep for 3 hours, and go to work. You know, quick shower and go to work on 3 hours of sleep. Or we would close the bar at 4 a.m. and go right to work at 6 in the same clothes. We didn't, it was hustle. It wasn't, oh, you have feelings, let's talk about it. It was stuff it down and get to work and get it done. So it was a different mentality.
Hmm.
And back then they didn't look at diet. There wasn't gluten free. It didn't exist. There wasn't health food. You'd go to the grocery store and there was a tiny little section that had maybe 20 products that was health food, and this corner in this dark little corner, and everything was expired because no one bought it. Now it's like health food is the number one thing, and you have like
Hmm.
one junk food aisle. You have the cookies and candy here, and everything else is 20,000 kinds of yogurt, and they're all good. This is why this one's better. I mean, back then we had Yoplait, which is garbage yogurt. That was it. With yogurt, here you go. 20 grams of sugar, have at it. Now it's like you have your garbage yogurt here, and then you have all these, no sugar added, specialty, probiotic. None of that existed.
Probiotic. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
probiotic, special yogurt, like everything is so different. And now, if you went in and said, I have this diet pill problem and I have this eating problem, people who have the DSM, so counselors now can open up that book, and there is actually a diagnosis for what I had, which
Mm-hmm.
is eating to the point of vomiting without forcefully vomiting. It's not called bulimia anymore.
It's in a
So it's in
binge.
there. So what I had is now a condition of, okay, this is how we treat it. This is what's wrong with you. Back then it was like, well, you don't fit criteria. So there's nothing wrong with you because it's not in my book. you know, now it's like, well, there's something wrong with you. What's going on? Is it trauma? Is it diet? Is it social? Is it emotional? Is it mental? Is it chemical? So now we're way more versed in all of these things. But that's how I got here. I started creating, helping other people based upon my own journey of there
Mm-hmm.
were no resources. So my first thing I ask clients are, what are you eating?
Mm-hmm.
What does your social scene look like? What does your friend group look like? What does your chemistry look like your biochemistry? Let's do a blood draw. And then we do a genetic test. Do you have certain genetic markers for certain things? Are you predisposed to being addicted to alcohol because you have a genetic marker? I want to know
Yeah.
all that.
It's
So it's
yeah.
completely different.
Yeah, it's definitely very important. And I like how you touched on all of that and you're bringing that up because it is completely different world. And first, I was going to ask just like a random question. It's like, where do you shop for groceries? I feel like where I shop, it's still kind of like so many junk food aisles and so much highly processed. Like, so just like, just asking, where do you shop? I know it's kind of
So
random.
it's not random at all. I have a whole bunch of different stores. So I go to the fresh market, which is close,
Okay.
and I get all my organic, like high end stuff. And then I go to the regular grocery store. We have Publix, but with
Publix.
Publix, you shop around the outside. Don't go up and down the aisles. So
Okay.
your food is around the outside. Your food like product is up and down the aisles. So food is one item. An apple is a food. A potato, like a sweet potato, is a food. Potato chips are not a food. They are a food like product. So anything with two ingredients or more is now a food like product.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense where like I do, put stuff in my cart when it is around, like, like fruit and then also just the aisle, like the dairy aisle or whatever. I can't really have much dairy. But when I do go up and down, I'm just like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. No. Like I shop in Aldi as well. Just grocery prices are insane. We could talk about eggs too, but that's just like a running joke in this country. I do like Aldi and then like I do BJ's just for like, like meats and things like that. And then Publix is more kind of like a random run because Publix is a little expensive in my opinion. You explained like why you went into psychology and coaching and such, but I do remember reading about that you had a business that kind of crashed in 2008, like during the recession, right?
So I got out of this industry because I was burning out. I was doing all nonprofit work and I was
Okay.
putting in 60-hour work weeks. And I learned I couldn't pay my rent, my car payment, and my student loan in the same month. I was always in the negative. And I was like, with a master's degree. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And I'm helping people that are on Section 8, they're on welfare, they're on food stamps, they have medical. And I'm thinking to myself, these people have money and they're able to eat and I
Mm-hmm.
can't eat. And I'm putting in 60-hour work weeks and I'm in the negative. So this is ridiculous. So I quit and I was done. And a friend of mine and I moved to Texas and we started a fitness company. And it was funny because we moved to Texas because they had first month rent free. So the first month was like 30 days free
Mm-hmm.
on a 12-month lease. And I'm like, cool. And you could put it on a credit card. I'm like, even better. So here we are. And I'm like, what do we do? And we're applying for jobs and we're not getting any bites. So I said, let's start a company. And he goes, let's do fitness. Because we both, I have some fitness background. I learned Pilates and yoga and kickboxing. And I was a training director at World Gym at one point. So I'm like, let's do it. So I flipped over my bin. We had no furniture. My bin of clothes. And I put my computer on there. And that was my desk. And I said, let's start a company. And this is right in like 2003 when the internet was just coming on. And Google was just a thing. And Craigslist was the only thing. So we did. And we started a fitness company and we grew it from $0 to $4 million in 3 years. We had 1,000 independent contractors, 17 in-house staff, a penthouse in Dallas. We had 5 offices across the country. We had houses everywhere, cars everywhere, and it was gangbusters. And in 2008, when the mortgage industry crashed, people got rid of their princess purchases. They got rid of their maid. They got rid of their housekeeper. their dog walker, their in-home personal trainer, which was us. So we literally lost everything in 2 months. We went from $4 million to zero and had to lay everybody off. And then we were in LA and the prices in LA were ridiculous. So I said, I'm going to move home to Philly to regroup. And in process, ended up losing everything in a fire. So the movers, everything just in Vegas somewhere, the whole entire truck just caught on fire. So by the time I got to Philly, I was in a house with no heat, no running water, no money in my bank account. Everything I owned burned up in a fire and my car was in repo. And I'm just sitting there in this house going, I've got a laptop, a flip phone, because this is before actual PDA phones, my dog, my djembe drum, and the clothes on my back going, how the F did I get here? So that was the second time I was homeless. And I went, okay, I know how to get out of the situation. So I went to the library and because I had no internet, and I took my resume and started sending it out to everybody I could think of. And I just waited, and it took 2 months. And this is like 2 months of me eating, I would go to Wawa and I would get the coffee cup. I bought one coffee cup and I would go have it refilled every day for 30 cents. That was my coffee. And I would buy one sandwich for $5 and that was my food. That's all I ate because all I had money for. So I got this job and I went from making millions of dollars to $45,000 a year. And I was doing assessments for psychiatric children's facility in Doylestown. And I remember coming to work going, this is not for me. I'm sitting at a desk from 4 to midnight, dealing with crazy parents and kids on psychiatric holds. Not for me. I got to get out of this. So my business partner and I were like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, let's start a record label out of nowhere. And he's like, what? And I'm like, let's start a music company. Sounds like fun. I don't want to get back into addiction. I hate the addiction.
Wow, I like you.
I'm like, let's do
it. Okay.
And he looks at me and he goes, how? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. So we did. We started a music company.
All right.
And we put ads on Craigslist and we did EPKs for musicians, electronic press kits. This is back when EPKs were in. So the internet was just new, and people were this is back when MySpace was the only thing. Yep. And this is how people were connecting. So we made press kits for musicians, and my late husband had answered my ad. That's how I met my husband. And he said, I want to hire you for my band. And I had driven to New York. I met him in New York. Him and the whole rock and roll band were there to Starbucks with me, and they hired us. And then he started asking me out, and I said, I don't date clients. So he fired my company to get a date with me. And I was like, you're kidding. You're my only paying client right now. It's only paying client, So he fired me and said, come to New York, come on a date with me. And I was like, oh my God. So I said, no, you have to come to me. And he said, fine. And he hopped the train and came to me. And I said, you got to give me a couple reasons why we should date. Because, you're in New York, I'm in Philly, I'm in this house with no heat, no running water. I'm at the bottom of my life right now. And you're in New York City, killing it. So he goes, well, I'm going to give you a couple reasons. He said, first, we both love music. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be a better reason than that. Okay. He said, we both like to text. And I'm like, okay, still better reason. He said, we both wear eyeliner. And I was like, I do like my boys with eyeliner. I remember I'm an 80s baby. So I like my men with eyeliner. So I'm like, okay. I said, one more. And he said, well, we both love me, meaning him. And I said, purely based on your narcissistic, self-absorbed attitude, you have one date. And he goes, you'll marry me after one date. I was like, challenge accepted. We went on one date and I loved him. And we ended up moving in, getting married, and having a 14-year run before he passed away. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in the next phase of my life, which took me to Florida because he's from here. Okay. So that brought me down here, and then eventually went back into my own field because I said, I really need to get back into the helping profession because this is what I'm good at. It's what I know. And I got back into this, and I said, but if I do it, I only want to work with the top 1% to 5% because I'm not going to be the working poor. So I specialize in executives and celebrities. And he was a touring musician. So I kind of got my foot in the door with musicians and a couple famous people, and then my career took off.
So I want to definitely get into that. I feel like that's going to be so interesting. So now you're in the world of working with celebrities who struggle with addiction. So Was this like in New York? I'm thinking about celebrity wise. A lot of them are in California, of course, New York. So, like, where were you at this time?
So I travel from my clients. I go to them. So
Okay.
I was in Florida and I do the New York, Dallas, Denver, LA corridor. And I go wherever they need me. So there's a
Right.
lot, believe it or not, a lot of celebrities are in Florida,
Really?
mostly in Tampa, Clearwater. So I go over to Tampa a lot, see a lot of clients. Palm Beach has all my executives. So New York and Palm Beach are my C suites. So I take care of them. And then when I do LA, I do the celebrities. So I'm kind of bi-coastal. I go back and forth as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm thinking, like, who here is in Florida? But then again, like, celebrities can range from like basketball players to like singers to actors. When I was looking up, I was like listening to one of the podcasts. Which podcast episode I was listening to? That was yours. It was 2018, and it was like the mental happy hour
Yeah,
one.
that was in LA.
Yes. I was just like just seeing what other podcasts you're on, just to kind of see the feel of like who you are. And I listened to like about half of it, and you were telling all these stories about, I believe, like actors and
Yeah.
such. Were those in LA or like?
Some of them in LA.
Okay.
Sometimes they will hire me and they will want to boondock or like get an Airbnb in the middle of Sedona, in the middle of
Okay.
nowhere, or like Wyoming to get out of the craziness of LA. So we'll go somewhere. But
Okay.
yeah, I do a lot of actors. I do a lot of musicians. I'm known for the rock and roll musician guys. So a
Really?
lot of them that have been treatment resistant or
Hmm.
the managers allowed it because they're still performing and the
Hmm.
manager doesn't want to say no. I come in and I'm the person who says no. And I'm pretty hard line with what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. I'm
Hmm.
not warm and fuzzy, so I don't get a lot of women. I work with a lot of men, or I work
Okay.
with a lot of type A women that are, executives. So we do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And that's how we're going to get there. I've worked with a couple of the housewives. I call them the desperate housewives, but I think it's like the housewives of whatever.
Like the reality TV show?
Yes. I've had a couple of them because what you see on TV isn't reality. It's not what's real.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I have a friend in PR in New York City, and he works with not A-list, but he's been connected and around people with A-list. Like, he's worked like the Met Gala, the Fashion Week. So he's surrounded by them all the time. And he's like had Instagram as a client, like all these pretty big names. And so he's kind of like my go-to guy, where I'm just like, I'm really curious to see, because on the media could just, I don't like to go by the media when it comes to talking about certain people. I like to hear from the source. So he was supposed to have a reality show himself, and he was supposed to be like the publicist for like some fashion people and such. It never like got picked up, but in his close friend's story, he was just saying how the producers were making his like fake friends. Like, they went to like a lunch, it was like a lunch scene or whatever, and they told him behind his back to like say certain things to get him going. And
Yeah.
then when he was, so that creates a fight. And
Hmm.
then when the cameras were off, he goes to him, he's like, "Why are you guys being a bunch of assholes?" Like, "Oh, the producers told us to piss you off." Like, so as you were saying, like, yeah, it's like I look at that too, and I'm just like, I mean, American Idol's like a whole different world. Like, I was part of like the crowd in American Idol, like just like in the whole, like, how they show like the whole like audience or whatever, and it's really like filmed like 2 months ago, or yeah, so just like, yeah, in reality, reality show's not reality.
Yeah. And I've turned down 4 opportunities to do a reality show because
Really?
I was like, it's not real. Like, it's not, what
Yeah.
you're asking me to do is not what I do. It's
Hmm.
not how this goes. But if you're willing to follow me, throw me an actor and give him a drug addiction, that's fine. And film me doing it, but film me doing it my way. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, we need that. I'm like, listen, I've got so many stories that are off the chain that would be great for TV, but I'm not going to change how I treat a client because it
Hmm.
makes better ratings, if that makes sense. Now, I've had a lot of
Yeah.
students on A&E's intervention show. I've had 5 different students that have come through my training program that went on to A&E. But I've turned A&E's intervention down because I'm like, I'm not going to follow a script. You want me to do it? I'll do it. Film me doing it, but don't give me a script because it won't work.
So it's a script. I thought it was more like improv. Wait, what? Really?
So reality TV, they give you how they want it to go. They want this,
Yeah.
they want this, this is the expectation. So
Right.
you have to follow a specific program. And if
Mhm.
you're unwilling to follow a program, like for me, when you see the scene where they're like all sitting on the sofa, when I
Mhm.
do an intervention, no one's on a sofa. We're sitting around a round table and we're
Mhm.
sitting in specific seats for a specific reason. And it works,
Mhm.
it flows a different way. So when I was interviewed, I was like, well, I need a table, I need this, I need that. They said, oh no, we're going to do it on a sofa. That's not how it works. That's not
Mhm.
how any of this works. So there's all these like expectations of drama. They want drama. I get it. People want drama. People want negative. People want to see
Mhm.
that someone else's life is worse than their life. I
Yeah.
get that.
It's the
But
reality.
I'm like, this isn't going to sell my brand because this is not how we do things.
Yeah.
So I do things differently. And I know a lot of people like, they go on those shows and things because it helps them bring followers and such. But
Yeah.
those aren't my clients. Most of my
Right.
clients aren't on Facebook, or they have a
True.
handler that monitors their Facebook.
Yeah.
Um, one of them was funny, and he said to me, he's like, I went to post on my Twitter, which is now X. He goes, and I
Mhm.
realized I don't have my logins, so I emailed my agent, what are my logins? Or I text my agent my logins, and she goes, you can't have your logins. And he said, well, why not? It's my account. He said that his agent said, you're a liability. And I was like,
Jeez.
because of why? And he said, because they know I'm going to post stuff I shouldn't post. And I'm like, so you don't even have access to social media. So I'm looking at his channel. I'm like, so none of this is you? He goes, I don't, because I'm not allowed to post. So my agent does all my posting. So a lot of my clients are like that. People say, oh, they answered me on social media. No, they didn't. Their PR
Yeah.
answered you on social media, or their agent, or their handler answered you, because they don't run their channels. They're
Huh.
not allowed to.
Wow. So are we talking like all platforms? Because I know you mentioned
Um,
Facebook. Okay,
yeah,
so all platforms.
a lot of them, yeah, because you have to think of it this way. So, you know how sometimes you see a celebrity that gets in trouble for posting something controversial and then
Yes.
they take it down? Like Kim Kardashian's a big one. She'll post something and then people will go, oh my God, and then it's just gone. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she has access to her channel. So some agents don't want that because they post and they have to remove it and they have to clean it up. So
Mhm.
some celebrities have zero access to
Mm.
anything, and they have a handler that does all their posting, so it's all PQ, or it's proper for what you're looking for. Now
Right.
some don't. Some that like controversy will have their own channel, and they might post something and then take it down, or post something and take that down, and to get people going, to get people involved or interested or starting to fight. Because what
Mhm.
do people sitting at home whose lives are boring, what do they
Mhm.
want? They want to see a celebrity having a fight. They want to see a celebrity getting
Mhm.
arrested. They want to see a drunken mess because they're like, ooh, excitement, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
If you get up and go to work and come home and take care of the kids and cook and clean and do the laundry, your life's boring. You want to see a celebrity having a meltdown in the middle of Times Square because someone didn't put the right M&M on their cookie. You want to see that. That's exciting to you. So sometimes it's let through so that everyone else gets all riled up, and then their name goes through the tabloids again. And you're like, oh, so and so's relevant again. You haven't heard from them again.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
I try my best to not be that person just for like mental health reasons. Like I try to stay away from the negativity, but I'm going to be so honest with you right now cuz it's kind of relevant to what we're going right now. I've been kind of went down the rabbit hole of TikTok. Did you hear recently about the Bad Baby and Alabama Barker fight? Really? Okay.
I don't follow Bad Baby because that itself,
Huh.
her mother belongs in jail. That's all I'm going to
Oh
say.
yeah,
Her
yeah.
mother set her up for this mess. Even though
Mhm.
she's making a lot of money,
Mhm.
she's got so many issues. But go ahead, tell me about the issue.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about it really quickly. So pretty much, Bad Baby. I'm not gonna say her real name, Danielle, because it feels weird saying Bad Baby all the time. So Danielle, she has a baby daddy. She had a kid, and apparently Alabama slept with him twice. So it's one of those kind of situations where it was like breaking girl code, and then Alabama Barker's like, "Oh, I didn't know that was your man," or he came to me. Like it's one of those like petty kind of like. I mean, they're young too, so like Alabama's like 19, Danielle's like 21. So it's kind of one of those, but it kind of made me think at first that it was like a whole publicity stunt because Danielle, she's been out of the spotlight for a while. Like from what she says, she chooses it. And now she's back in the spotlight because of the whole drama, because she was calm, but then once like something triggers her, she gets into her whole like ratchet kind of thing, like I'm gonna beat you up kind of scenario. And I know Alabama is trying to go into like become a rapper. So like I know those two things. I'm like, is this a publicity stunt? But then it's kind of hard to tell because like when you're watching videos of Danielle like seeing really upset about the situation, like it's actually happening in real life, it's like I can't tell. You know what I mean? It kind of gets me thinking. I think that's more why I'm kind of paying attention to it, because it just like I know for a fact, and we talked about this before, that the media doesn't really show everything and it just lies just for entertainment, as you were saying as well. So it's like it kind of makes me curious. And like the fact that they both have diss tracks, they created diss tracks for each other. So the fact that there's music involved, I'm like, is this a real fight? Or is this just like trying to get Alabama's Barker? Like, but I mean, to be honest with you, like between me and you, I don't think her career is gonna go anywhere. She's not that great, to be honest. And if you were to tell me which team I'm on, to be like Danielle. But I'm not the kind of person to be like, oh, I'm on team this, team that. Like, I'm not that person. If I am, I won't like comment it. I haven't commented anything just because, just in case it's real. Like, I wouldn't, even though I don't matter to Alabama or Danielle, like, I just don't want to be that person giving my opinion. But yeah, I think I was just wondering if you like knew about that. That's currently what's like popping on TikTok right now.
Think about it this way. This is going on in America everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's people always having a feud or having a fight here and there. This one has a baby daddy, this one doesn't. Whatever the feuds are, we don't hear about any of it, right? Because it happens
Mhm.
every single day.
Right.
Nor are we interested. It's when somebody somehow is in the spotlight, whether they're an influencer or they came up through Dr. Phil or whatever it is, we're suddenly interested in their life. But their life is no different than everyone else's. So, it's kind of like, I won't even say this PQ. It's like the trailer park is now making money, and now we're
Mhm.
watching the trailer park fight go on in real time, in real life. That's what we're looking at. So it's
Mhm.
it's people gravitate towards discord, they gravitate towards fighting, they
Mhm.
gravitate towards anything other than what's going on in their life because it's entertaining, right?
Right.
If you look at her, rise to stardom, and I'm not a Dr. Phil fan either. I mean, he exploits people for money. This is an
Yeah.
example. So what happened? He puts this girl on there who has anger issues, so
Mhm.
the mom can make a quick buck. And what did
Mhm.
she say? Cash me outside,
Cash
right?
me outside. How about that?
How about that? So now we have a catchphrase, and that's what stuck, like the Huck Tour girl, right? You got a catchphrase. So the catchphrase stuck, and we all went, well, that's kind of a cool catchphrase, right?
Right.
You have this angry teenager
Mhm.
who, in all respects and purposes, actually needed therapy. And I want to know what the trauma was that caused all this. But
Mhm.
we take that, and what do? Her mom uses it to make money. Then
Mhm.
it turns into a music career. Well, sort of. But what did she make her money on?
Pretty much like her mom exploited her and her anger. No, am I saying nothing? Okay.
You're right. You're right. But when
Oh,
she
okay.
turned 18, she opened up an OnlyFans. All
Yes.
these older men that have been watching her are now on there giving her money as a subscription. So now you've got a whole subset of dirty old men,
Yeah.
right? That's how she made her money. That's brilliant on her part. Absolutely brilliant.
Business wise, yeah.
She took this negative environment because the world either loved her or hated her, right? You have people that
Right.
are loving her and people that are like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
she said, I'm gonna make money at it. Brilliant. However, we now have, if you take the Dr. Phil piece out of it and you say, okay, you have this angry teenager, because there's tons of angry teenagers with trauma, right?
Mhm.
How do we help them? How do we fix them? How do we change them? Had she had therapy and intervening, she probably wouldn't be where she is. So she wouldn't be a multimillionaire, number one, but she wouldn't
True.
have built her whole brand on anger. Her whole brand is built on anger, being mad at the world, being angry, right? So to your point, she's kind of been out of the limelight for a while. Let's start a little fight. Let's start a little public fight, bring the anger back. What happens now? Her little following comes back, doesn't it? And who's her following? You have to look at her followers. Are they women that are angry? Are they men that are, going, hey, how you doing? What are her followers? What brand is she catering to? I
Mhm.
mean, her marketing is brilliant
Mhm.
because she's using everything that got thrown against her to her advantage. Smart. Eminem did
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, no, I honestly do believe she's smart. I know like some people, like a lot of people hate her because she comes off, because she's like ratchet, angry. They're like, oh, who's this girl, disrespectful. But I've never like disliked her at all. It never, like, she never got me angry. I think like, yeah, she could come off as like rude and disrespectful, but at the end of the day, when she was interviewed, she always said like the truth, which I respected her for that, even if it was delivered really badly. And I also just consider that she's like a minor, and like, I can't, if someone's like a minor and they're still in the development stage, I'm like, I mean, even though it's not, it shouldn't be an excuse for being rude. I do kind of like, okay, yeah, she's rude, but also like, I don't know. I guess for me, like maybe if she was coming at me and telling and beating me up, then it'll be a different story. But like just like watching it, I don't know. I don't know if it's also just me coming from Jersey and I'm just used to people like that. To be honest with you, I mean, like that's kind of like a Jersey way
Yeah.
of acting. So I guess I was surrounded by that too. I feel like as long as she, like, yeah, she comes off as like extra and rude, but so far I don't think she's really done anything like truly unethical, like to like the world. Like she's actually has done things to like like she's created like certain funds to help people who are not privileged, and like people in school. Like that's pretty cool on her end. And when she's in interviews, like there's a lot of times she's calm, and there's a lot of time where she just like her responses is just like but I think it's like, I think even though it comes off like that, like I just considered like she needs some therapy and growth. And psychology wise, if you're constantly surrounded by people that talk like that, and that's like, you think that's the norm.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
people like us, we're looking at the TV and we're just like, oh my god, this girl is so rude. But like we have to consider like how she was brought up.
And now you have an extra added layer. She built her brand on this behavior. So the world
Hmm.
expects her to be this person.
Right.
And I know I'm older than you, but anybody listening in my age bracket will remember Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island. Have you watched it?
Sure, I have, maybe,
Okay.
but I
There's
know
one
it.
actress on there named Ginger, and she was
Okay.
the one who wore the big gowns, and she was real pretty, and she had like the perfect figure. She, in real life, could not get a job after Gilligan's Island,
Okay.
whereas everyone else went on to get other jobs in the acting field. And she said it was because she was cast as a sex symbol in the 70s
Mm.
in this show. And every role she applied for, like the girl next door, or to be funny, she was turned down for. The only role she could get was a sex symbol. And she said it was because she was cast so well and did so well in that function. That's who the world saw her as,
Mhm.
right? Whereas Marianne, who was like the girl next door with the pigtails and the cute little bikini, and she was fun, she got a lot more roles because they saw her as fun.
Mhm.
That's what I think we're seeing with some celebrities. When they come out and they have a persona and they present a certain way, we don't accept them any other way. Kim Kardashian is a good example. She's got a sex tape. She's got naked photos. She's all about how she looks. And then all of a sudden, she's an attorney in the state of California. Everyone's like, okay, what? And she didn't go to school. She just took a test. It's like they don't want to see her as credible or smart because she built her brand on how she looks. So
Uh,
the world sees her as a sex symbol, not somebody who's smart, right?
yeah.
So it's all in presentation, it's in branding. If you come out a certain way, people will say, that's what I expect from you. And then when you try
Mhm.
to change your pivot, society won't let you do that in the
Mm.
celebrity market. You're stuck. And that's why we see so much addiction because when they try
Mm.
to pivot, they can't. And they say, well, but I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to be this angry person fighting people. I want to be this generous person who does all these things. But then their market share goes down, their viewers go down, their followers go down, their music listeners go down. So they start using drugs and alcohol,
Mhm.
which creates crazy town, and then their viewers go up, and then their sales go up, and people go, oh my goodness, they were drunk and doing blah blah blah, and suddenly they're watching their movie. you know what happened? Ben
Yeah.
Affleck's a good example. Ben Affleck's doing well. What happens? We don't have a whole lot of followers. He starts drinking again, and he's in the news. Everyone's going, what's going on with Ben Affleck? Ben Affleck, Ben Affleck. We're all Googling him. Is he okay? What's going on with Jennifer Gardner? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. Because he's in the news because he was drunk. But when he's sober, nobody knows who he is. So it's that constant, celebrities are constantly up against society wanting drama. And then they start creating the drama, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. They're back in the news. They're selling books, they're selling movies, they're selling music, they're selling merchandise. Something happens and they're back in it. And if you look at Russell Brand, he started becoming, second rate after Katy Perry. And then all of a sudden, he's in the sobriety movement. And he rewrote the 12 steps. And everyone's like, oh, Russell Brand, he made a big comeback. He's sober. Everything's about sobriety now. And he's back in the limelight. He took it and flipped it around. Instead of, I want to be drinking and being a mess, I'm going to roll with sobriety. And that's going to put me in the spotlight. So that's the hard part with celebrities is being able to pivot and shift. He's a good example of shifting into sobriety and still maintaining the market share.
Yeah, I've been wanting to ask this question for a bit, and I don't want to forget because I want to ask it. So you work with all these celebrities, and you were telling me how they can't have access to like their social media, like their managers, their agent, and such, right? So I want to talk about kind of like this, like my generation right now. Like, well, I don't really know what generation. I'm like kind of like edge of millennial and Gen Z. It's confusing for me. So I'm just gonna say both. It's very confusing. Like I'm 95 and we're like the ones who are like, am I millennial or Gen Z? I have no idea. Like I'm old enough to know to be on MySpace, young enough to be doing TikTok dances. But like a lot of people from TikTok, like who are younger, they've gotten like have music, like they're in the music industry and such. So I do know that some of them have been going, like some of them that I've been like listening to have ended up like have had addiction. They came forward about it and such. And so I guess what you see like because you're still in this industry, like do you see it being completely different than when you like originally started?
Yeah, so when I first started, it was not cool to be sober. It wasn't, especially in the rock and roll scene, right?
Of
The
course,
rock and
yes.
roll is always, let's get drunk, let's get women, let's, Motley Crue, for example. I didn't know you know what Motley Crue is. I hope, maybe.
What was the name again?
Motley Crue, the band? Okay.
Sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
Motley Crue is the best example. So Motley Crue in the 80s was a big rock and roll band, and they were thrown together. This is before boy bands, but this is how the boy band concept came out. There was a producer who said, I want to get 4 good-looking guys that can kind of play, that can kind of, produce music, but that they're fun on stage. So he had a guitar player, and then he found 3 other guys, and they could barely play. But they were good looking and they were fun on stage. So women liked them. That was his theory. And it worked. And he said, I'm going to call them a Motley Crue. And Motley Crue is basically like a bunch of crap thrown together, just a mess. So he created these guys. All of their music is about drugs, about women, about strippers. They were all married to adult movie stars. They all had kids with different women. Like their lives in the public spotlight was crazy. But they were one of the most successful rock bands of all time. And they're not the best musically. And they're just not. But they're fun. So their whole brand was built on being the best at the worst, if you think about it. So back in the 80s and 90s, if they would have gotten sober, they would have lost market share because they were drunk on stage. They were high on stage. They were overdosing. That's Nikki Sixx from the band and me and my husband. He was the bass player. He didn't even know how to play a bass. He stole a bass from Guitar Center in the middle of the night thinking it was a guitar. He even stole the wrong instrument. Like, it's crazy stuff like that that made them popular. But nowadays you do that, people are like, oh no, that's no good. We don't want that. But back then, that's how it went. So now they're mostly sober. The singer still is a little iffy. And the drummer still has a coke problem. But they, back then, being drunk and high was in. Now being sober is in. So it's completely flipped.
It's like a sober movement right now.
Right. And back then, trying to get these guys sober would have been crazy.
Yeah. I was also thinking, I kind of, when you were saying that, how it is cool to be like drunk and on something. There's this like one person that I listen to. She's actually my favorite artist. She's not like fully like A-list or anything like that. She has the potential. Her name is Nessa Barrett. I don't know if you ever heard of her, but she started her career being like sad. Like she has borderline personality disorder, and so all her what she would write had to do with her life, and it was always just so good and so raw. And I liked her a lot just because a lot of, like, as I told you before, I struggle with that as well, so I related to her. But now she completely changed everything, and her most recent album is all about like being a slut pretty much. Well, no, that came out really wrong. Let me back up here. That came out so wrong. Okay, her whole idea is not like, oh, let me just like teach you how to be a slut. It's more of kind of like woman empowerment, kind of. So like her first album, well, her EP was more of just like kind of talking back to the people who would bully her on the internet. Like, you know how the world is. And like, she was one of the lucky TikTokers. So she's literally was a nobody. And then now she's like super famous, and like the pressures of that. And then the second one was kind of jumping off that. So she would, yeah. So, but then her EP after that was, so she got a relationship with this guy, Jaden, and they're both on TikTok and they both had careers. So that other album was called Hell is a Teenage Girl. And so basically she related to like that crowd, like that's her like fan base, and it was pretty much like breakup songs, but like going through like it, like she pretty much brought people through it. And then Aftercare is kind of like, okay, you were a hopeless romantic, you were like sad, you had this like really like twin flame relationship, you kind of had like your breakup moment, and now you're just kind of like a bad bitch, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of how she came off. And one of her songs that did really well, and she actually performed on Jimmy Kimmel, was her song Porn Star. And she said, she's like, I did not expect that song to do so well. Because it's like all the songs in the album, it's not just about sex. Like there's other songs where it's like a little bit more like romantic, and kind of it's kind of a little bit like how her first like EP was. Her album is called Aftercare. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what that meant until my boyfriend had to tell me what aftercare meant. Do you know what aftercare means?
In my industry, it means addiction help after you've gone through rehab. I don't know what it means over there in that terminology. It's probably something different.
It pretty much means like the care after sex. I didn't know what that meant, but I was like, okay, because at first I was like, why is she naming this aftercare? But yeah, I think the whole point was not like, oh, I'm such a slut. Like, you know how like obviously songs in the industry they talk about inappropriate things, and like that's what does well. I don't think she did that too for that reason. I think that she was kind of entering a different era in her life, because when she started, she was 17, 18, and she started getting bigger when she was 19. Now she's like almost 23. So it's kind of like two different, I feel like it was two different phases in her life. But oh God, where was I going with this?
Well, if she got signed or she has producers and agents, they will shift your music career for you. So if you look at different artists before and after they got signed, you see a different type of music. You see a different pattern. Because what they do is they look at what you're producing and then they want sellable. So they'll say, well, I want to shift you this direction. And it might be a subtle shift or it might be a big, okay, this is great, but instead of, borderline personality songs about mental health, we're going to shift you a little bit edgy into some little bit other things.
Bold.
You're more this. And it could be the time period. I mean, you've got WAP, that's huge. It's women empowerment, right? Guys sing about it, you're like, gross. Women sing about it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that came out. So the producers and her agents may have said, all right, let's go a little more edgy this way, because this is what's popular right now. This is going to sell.
Right.
And that may be how she got on Jimmy Kimmel. Like when I wrote my first book, I Married a Junkie, I got on KTLA TV because of the title. Back then, junkie was a bad term in 2018. It was like, don't call them junkies. And I wrote a book called I Married a Junkie. First question they asked me on TV is, why did you tell people you married a junkie? That's like horrible. Like, no, It's not. Let me tell you why. Now everybody's a junkie, American junkie or food junkie or this junkie. It's like, I was the first one who did it. And I did it when it wasn't popular, and it's what got me on TV. So you have to look at trends. What's trending, what's not trending, what's sellable, what's not sellable, and then people gravitate towards that thing. So men sing all the time about, women being porn stars and hookers and strippers, but how often do women sing about that? Very rarely. So
She
when
did
they do,
actually.
it's like, when WAP came out, I was singing it all day long, and everyone's like, why are you singing that? I'm like, because women never put that out. Never. Go back to the 80s and 90s of music in the R&B industry. It's all about
Mhm.
hoes. It's all about my hoes and strippers and essence men. You've got a woman talking about this stuff, completely different perspective.
Yes, actually, when you're saying that, she has one song called "Glitter and Violence." And when she was talking about an interview, she was like, "Yeah, it's about strippers." She was like, "Yeah, I've met strippers. I talked to them. They're like the most confident people. Like, obviously, like you have to have some type of confidence to go up there." But yeah, it was called "Glitter and Violence." And yeah, actually, what you were saying, maybe that's what they were doing. She signed to Warner Records, so like one of the
There you
biggest
go.
labels. And the first song she came out with, it was called "Pain," and it was like super. Like if you look at the music video, it's like pretty much just her like crying, well not crying, but like it's just like the most depressing song ever. And then now she's like out here singing "Glitter and Violence." So but now I'm thinking, like, do you think that they have like any say, because
Oh,
she
they
always
have all
talks.
say. Once
Wait,
you're
what?
signed, you're told, and she may even have a writer now. So a lot of these artists have writers that write their music and they just sing it.
She's part of like the writing process, because if you look at Spotify credits, you can see that. And I think at the end of the day, they always have support with writers, but like I do believe she does have a big part in the whole writing process. And she just basically says like her music connects to like her phases in her life. But now if we think about it, because you're talking about sex symbols, this whole album, she turned herself into a sex symbol, right?
So when they're part of the writing process, it means they have a say in it, but they may not have the say in the direction of where we're going. So
Mm-hmm.
usually the way it works is the artist comes in and they have two writers. There's usually a team of three. Sometimes there's more.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit them down and they say, okay, our goal for this album is whatever. We're going to turn you into a sex symbol. Okay, what does that look like? Well, we're going to create a series of songs that do this, 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 and this. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. So then they lay it out for her and they say to her, okay, what do you think? Okay, well, I want to do this. I want to take it this way. So she may have some say, but those writers are going to pick it up for her and they're going to ping pong it off and they're going to write
Mm-hmm.
something. And then at the end of the day, Warner has the final say if that's who she's
Yeah.
talking to. So they can say, we're not publishing any of that. And she can say, but I want to play it. Doesn't matter. You're signed to us. It's done. It's canned. It's in the trash. So they have the final say now from here on out. And this is where it gets really interesting. Depending on her contract, she may not own any of her music. She may have
I
signed it
doubt it.
all over to
Yeah.
them. So she's
Yeah.
getting this little percent of fee just to perform. And eventually what happens is, and we see this a lot, the artist gets frustrated because the whole creative process is gone. You have no
Right.
say in what you're doing. Now you're performing the hit over and over and over again, and you get bored. Where
Yeah.
addiction comes in. You feel stuck.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so porn stars are number one selling song, but that may not be the one she likes to perform. That may be the
Mm.
one she performs because people know it. And then she comes out with new music and wants something else. And a good example of this for people is Bon Jovi. Bon
Mm-hmm.
Jovi was rock and roll, right? Bon Jovi in the 80s was like the biggest sex symbol. All the women wanted him. He's amazing. He's the front of Bon Jovi, the band. And all of a sudden he comes out with a country album. Flops. We don't want country. We want rock and roll. We want the guy in
Mm-hmm.
the tight pants with the eyeliner. We don't want
Right.
to hear about, you went down to the bar and had a nice night, I'm going to play guitar. We're not interested. So that's what happens. And when that flopped, the record label said, okay, you had your shot, you flopped, back to rock and roll. It's where you belong. So even though it's not what he wants to play, he started off with country. They pushed him into rock and roll. He became a sex icon, a rock and roll icon. He still wants to play country and he's failing at it. So that's sort of what happens is they get into something and they're stuck with the label and they have to play what they're told to play.
Sounds like Machine Gun Kelly as well. Like he started with rap and now
Yep,
he's doing rock, and now he like gets hate because he switched it. But from what you're saying, do you think like I'm actually kind of wondering, like, are these artists like, is this really, because they always come out and they're like, oh yeah, and I wasn't feeling that. Like, they make it seem like it's like all them. Which
it's
I
not.
Yeah.
And now you know who Motley Crue is because Machine Gun Kelly played Tommy Lee in the movie Dirt, which is about Motley Crue's
Mhm.
life. And he's a great actor. Machine Gun
Mhm.
Kelly, in my opinion, give up the music career. Go into acting, phenomenal. I mean, he played Tommy Lee, and I know Tommy Lee really, really, really well. And I was like, wow, like he did really, really good. So yeah, and I mean, it's tough because he probably doesn't want to do any of that. He probably wants to be a rap artist. But that's not, I mean, coming from a consumer's perspective, that
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that was his forte. I wouldn't say that's the best thing he's brought forward. I would say his acting career is the best. But that's
think
my
I've even
opinion.
s I don't think I've even seen him. I mean, I don't even think I've seen him acting. I probably should Google what he's in, go to his IMDb and check it. I had to be honest with you, until now, I had no idea. I think I started, like, hearing his, like, rock music, like, probably it's, like, on Spotify or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, I like it, it's cool." And then, of course, he's associated with Megan Fox, so that's, like, another thing. The last question I do wanna ask you is, can you give me an example of, working with a celebrity, how they're addicted, they come to you, or they're, I guess, do they come to you, or is it just like the manager? Like, how does that like play out?
It could be the manager, it could be the TV station. So if there's a
Mhm.
show they're shooting, I may get the actual station like Warner or Universal. It
Okay.
could be the parents or it could be the
Okay.
spouse. Like,
Okay.
hey, because he's showing up for work, he's producing on set or he's producing on tour, but I'm done with this. I can't handle it. So it could be any one of those people.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so they approach you and then you start helping them. Can you give me an example of when they went from being super addicted to now they're sober and they're thriving?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So I had a call for a very famous person, and he had burned through probably 20 therapists, 10 rehabs. No one would work with this guy. And he was holed up in the Beverly Wilshire, and he had
Mhm.
rented the entire floor so that he could walk around in his underwear and smoke weed. So I get there, and I come up on the floor, and he's in like a robe and his underwear, and he's smoking a joint. And he's like, "What do you want?" Well, I'm here because you haven't shown up for work. He was an actor.
Mhm.
You're missing pretty much everything you're supposed to do. Your girlfriend's had enough, and I've been hired to, help you. And he basically told me to go F off. Called me the C word, called me the B word, called me the A word. And I'm like, okay, you done? And he just stopped. Just, what do you mean, am I done? And I'm like, I don't care what you call me. I'm here for 15 days. I'm paid in advance. So you're either going to play ball or I'm going to break you. So what are we going to do? And he's like, well, I'm not working with you. Slammed the door in my face. It's okay. I went to the gym. I came back. Knock, knock, knock. Ready yet? No. Okay. 3 days of this. Me leaving, coming, coming, going. On day 3, he finally crosses his arms and he's standing in the hallway and he's like, you're not going to leave me alone, are you? I said, no. I'm here for a reason. You're going to play ball. Now,
Mhm.
mind you, he's drinking, he's doing Xanax, he's doing opiates, he's a mess.
Mhm.
So we got him sober. Detox doc, detox nurse, get sober, goes through my therapy program. I do a 5-day executive reset, the whole thing. First time in 20 years he's ever been sober. He called his family and he's like, I've got 10 days sober. And they were like, wow, really? Yeah. So he started stacking days and we put him with a sober companion. Now, fast forward 60 days later, he's showing up to work, he's producing content, he's on set, doing everything he's supposed to do. The agent calls me and they're like, wow, this is 2 different people. And this is somebody who's been in the tabloids for 20 years, who's known for being an alcoholic crack addict. Bottom line, that's what they're known for. Now they're sober. And they're like, this is a totally different person. Of course it is. Fast forward now, he's got 6 or 7 years sober and he's doing great. And I see him on TV, he's in movies, and every once in a while I get an email or a phone call and, hey, how's it going? I'm still sober, thanks to you. And he refers me people, which is awesome. He'll be like, you got to work with Cali. She's the one who fixed my problem. Like, I didn't fix your problem. I helped you fix your problem. I'm just there, you
Mhm.
know? But it's awesome to see them thrive and see their careers thrive.
Awesome. I was like say you're so cool for that. So you mentioned a little bit about your book. You mentioned like the name junkie and how like pretty much like a buzzword that got people going. So what can people expect to read in that book? Like tell me more about like what it's about.
It's raw. I mean, the first book
We
is
love
my
that.
husband. It's real raw. Like the first book is about my childhood
Mhm.
and my husband's childhood and his addiction while I'm building my brand. And that was 2018. The second book, this one, I just dropped in 2023. This is about the rest of his addiction and how he passed away. Because everyone knows he passed away, but they don't really know what happened. Because I
Mhm.
didn't do a funeral, I didn't do a celebration of life, I didn't do any of it.
Mhm.
And they were just like, well, what happened? He's here, he's not. I put it in the book. And I
Mhm.
did that intentionally because he didn't die of a drug overdose. He died of a heart attack, which was long term complications of drug use. So the book is the first half is raw. It's raw, it's gritty, it's the stories just like the first book. And then the second half is about the signs I missed and the things I did wrong and the things I could have done and the things that other people can do to help your loved one. So it becomes like self help about halfway through. So it's different. But if you like raw and edgy with the F bomb, that's the book. If you like clean, that's not the book.
Then you're on the right podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's literally what mentally a badass is about. I mean, hey, it has the word badass in it. Sometimes I have guests come on here, they're like, it's okay if I curse. I'm like, go for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like if people filter what they say, like, that's not the point of what I'm trying to come across in the kind of world that, like, society that I'm trying to, like, influence and such. So you literally came to the right place. And Callie, I want to say I appreciate you so much for coming on. I had such a fun conversation with you, and I hope you did as well. But I want to say thank you so much.
So thanks for having me. This has been fun.